Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, let me tell you about the latest special from Mike Lindell at MyPillow. The standard MyPillow, normally $49.98 for a limited time only, just $14.88 with promo code Joey. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and see all the specials. There's a limited quantity of just 10 at this special price. That's $14.88 with promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. We have a lot to cover today to wrap up another week, this first few days of 2025. Terrorist experts are saying that the New Year's massacre in New Orleans, carried out with a pickup truck flying an ISIS flag, could embolden the terrorist organization to radicalize more Americans. We have some of the latest on this attack. Also, authorities now say that the accused attacker acted alone and planted remote detonator explosives inside of coolers in two nearby locations in the French Quarter just a few hours before he drove the pickup truck at a high rate of speed into the crowd of people celebrating New Year's on Bourbon Street. A Tesla Cybertruck explosion outside of the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas has been determined to not be linked to the attack in New Orleans. Vegas officials say the driver died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound just prior to the explosion. And the U.S. House will vote on who will be the Speaker of the 119th Congress. Can Speaker Mike Johnson gather enough votes for another term? We have the latest on that as well.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but, they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
Terrorist experts are saying that the New Year's massacre in New Orleans, carried out with the pickup truck flying the ISIS flag, could potentially lead to more Americans being recruited and radicalized by not only ISIS but other terrorist organizations. Samsu Din Jabbar, his youngest brother, told the New York Times that he and his Army veteran brother were raised Christian in Beaumont, Texas, before the now-deceased attacker converted to Islam as an adult. The younger brother said what he did does not represent Islam. This is more some type of radicalization, not religion. Retired FBI agent Scott Duffy and Chris Swecker told news media yesterday that the attack could embolden ISIS and other terrorist groups or individuals who have been radicalized. They said this is the time where ISIS is under extreme stress. Their resistance is being threatened in Syria and other places in the world, and it could make sense for them to double down on their message to radicalize Americans, to put them into action, and to activate any cells that they already have in place. Before his rampage in New Orleans, Jabbar posted several videos on Facebook declaring his support for ISIS. The FBI revealed some of these videos in a news conference yesterday as an update. FBI Deputy Assistant Director Christopher Rea said in the first video, Jabbar explains that he only planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned that the news headlines would not focus on the war between the, quote, believers and the disbelievers. So this was very obviously an attempt to gain attention for his cause. ISIS and other terrorist organizations, of course, use social media to recruit new members and to further their message. The FBI said that it starts off with soft messaging to try to attract people into the thought process. Links are often provided that lead people to additional messages, sowing division and distrust of government, and to try to recruit some of the young, impressionable minds. Now, honestly, I don't know how you go from being in the U.S. Army and being trained as a soldier to being indoctrinated under one of these extreme groups. I just don't get that. I don't know how you could turn someone. Maybe a young person who's never been trained in the military, or a young person who's very has an impressionable mind, who hasn't developed their belief system yet. But how do you turn a soldier who has trained to fight for his nation to become a terrorist, to become part of one of these radicalized groups who want to hurt other Americans? Authorities now say that Jabbar did act alone. You know, there was an initial report early on with some video footage that showed some people near some ice chests, that were located in the French Quarter, and they were questioned. These coolers. It's now been determined, according to authorities, that the attacker had placed those things in certain areas. He obviously had planned to detonate those. He had a detonator in his vehicle, in the pickup truck, that he plowed down these people with. And fortunately, thank goodness, he never was able to detonate them. The Bureau told congressional lawmakers yesterday that it had zero information about Jabbar prior to his attack. He wasn't even on their radar. I don't know that there's any reason that he would be. Again, he is a veteran, an Army veteran. Why would you suspect him? They also said that while Jabbar has said that he was inspired by ISIS, investigators have not found any evidence that he was directed by ISIS, that he may have just acted alone. New Orleans hospitals treated a total of 37 victims who were injured in Wednesday's attack. They have not stated how many of those injuries have been, or how many of those injured have been discharged, nor has it clarified the condition of those who are still hospitalized. Authorities have been investigating a potential military connection between Jabbar and the Las Vegas suspect, who law enforcement identified as Matthew Livelsberger, but agreed that there is no connection between these two incidents, although the two servicemen, both were in the Army, both were stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, but there's no evidence their paths ever crossed. We have more information about that bomb in Las Vegas that I'll share with you in just a few minutes. After searching the New Orleans attacker's home in Texas, investigators are now saying that he had a bomb-making workbench in what they're calling his ramshackle Texas trailer home. You see the images. It was not a very nice place. A lot of just chaos in his living. He was not very organized at all. There was a Quran that was left open on a page about slaying in the name of Allah. The Jabbar's North Houston home was filled with chemical residue and chemical bottles, had an inventory of items that have now been seized by the FBI, of course, and included a long list of compounds used in bomb making. His Quran was propped atop a bookshelf. The FBI released a photo of it. It was like a centerpiece in his living room. And again, it was open to a passage reading, "They fight in Allah's cause and slay and are slain, a promise binding." That passage is verse 9, 111. It expounds on Muslims' responsibility to kill Allah's enemies and to be willing to die for that mission in return for eternity in paradise. I'll never understand this religion. I'll never understand how people can have such little respect for their own lives. And he obviously set out that day knowing that he probably was going to die. Why? Again, I don't get it. I don't get, you have someone who was raised a Christian, was trained as a soldier to fight for his country, and he ends up killing and attempting to kill a lot more. Numerous books, the FBI say, about Islam were also in his home. They described it as squalid, nasty, said that there was a prayer rug rolled up nearby the Quran. FBI officials yesterday said that Jabbar posted 5 disturbing videos on Facebook on his drive from Houston to New Orleans just hours before he unleashed his attack on Bourbon Street. Again, 14 innocent pedestrians dead. In his first video, which was posted around 1:29 a.m., the U.S. Army veteran said that he had initially planned on murdering his family and friends, but changed his mind. And again, said that he wanted the headline to be about the war between the believers and the disbelievers. In other videos, he said that he had joined ISIS before this summer and showed off his last will and testament. Investigators confirmed that Javar, he was 42 years old, again ideologically aligned with ISIS, and that he specifically chose Bourbon Street as the target of his act of terror. They have yet to piece together what precisely brought about his radicalization and when this happened. He was considered good at what he did. He was considered an IT whiz. He was on a legitimate career path. Apparently, he had some tough times recently, both personally, financially. It's reported that he has had 2 failed marriages, that he was facing some huge debt, and I guess this was his way out. This was the easy way out, was to take other people with him and to make a statement about this horrific ideology, this religion or whatever that he had become to believe in. You know, if we try to get too deep into this and try to explain why he did this, why he committed this heinous crime, it'll drive us all crazy ourselves because it's unexplainable. You can't explain this type of evil. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. There's a lot of talk about making America great again, and it begins with making America healthy again. Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team at PhD Weight Loss are at the forefront to educate and guide you to be your best self. The millions being spent in propping up Big Pharma are astounding, only to create long-term dependency and harmful side effects. Let's take a natural approach that isn't connected to a pharmaceutical company's bottom line. The coaches at PhD Weight Loss will show you how. The entire program is centered around science and nutrition, a proven roadmap that has helped over 8,000 clients lose over 331,000 pounds. You'll learn what to eat and when, how to quiet cravings, and finally get rid of that belly fat. Plus, you'll never take a medication. How many pounds would you like to lose in 2025? Do it the natural way with PhD Weight Loss, here to lead the charge to make America healthy again. Call PhD Weight Loss and schedule your consultation. 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. The Tesla Cybertruck explosion that we talked about outside of Trump International in Las Vegas, this happened, of course, on Wednesday as well, and it's left investigators working overtime to literally piece together the details. We now know that the driver is 37-year-old Matthew Livelsberger, an active U.S. Army Special Operations soldier from Colorado Springs, Colorado. What is it with these soldiers being involved in these horrible incidents? This incident has raised some serious questions about safety, security, what led to this devastating act. So let's talk about what we know. The Cybertruck exploded at about 8:40 a.m. in the hotel's valet area, right there in front of the hotel at the main doors. And, of course, like a lot of hotels, and particularly the Trump properties, is all glass there. But beautiful property. Peg and I have stayed there several times over the years. Tragically, Livelsberger was in the car and was in the blast. It destroyed his body to the point that they had a tough time identifying who he was. 7 others were injured. Fortunately, though, nothing real serious. And here's the crazy thing. We're going to talk more about this in just a minute, but it did very little damage to the hotel. Did not even crack the glass right there in the front entrance. Authorities believe that, of course, this was no accident. This was a statement. The truck contained fireworks. It had gas tanks in it, camping fuel, and it was all connected to a detonation system that was controlled by the driver. Sheriff Kevin McMahill of Las Vegas, in a news conference yesterday, revealed the evidence pointing to Livelsberger as the person in the truck. Again, they're still waiting to confirm this with DNA and other samples of because his body was just totally destroyed. Investigators found his passport, his driver's license, and a military ID and credit cards with his name on them. They were all burned, but still somewhat identifiable, according to authorities. A tattoo on his arm matched the remains. that combined with the video evidence of the truck's movements leaves little doubt about that this is or exactly who he was. McMahill shared a timeline of Livelsberger's movements. He rented the Tesla Cybertruck on Saturday using the app Turo and made his way from Colorado to Las Vegas, charging the vehicle at several stops along the way. Now, I told you about this yesterday, that they had the history of when this vehicle had been charged, exactly where and for how long. They have surveillance footage that shows the truck driving up and down the Las Vegas Strip before pulling into the Trump Hotel valet area, leaving and then returning. Just 17 seconds after re-entering the truck, it exploded. The sheriff confirmed that Livelsberger had a gunshot wound to his head prior to the detonation of the vehicle. This raises more questions about what exactly happened in those moments leading up to the explosion. Matthew Livelsberger wasn't just any soldier. He was a Green Beret operations sergeant, part of the U.S. Army's elite special forces. Livelsberger served in Afghanistan. He earned numerous honors, including the Bronze Star Medal of Valor, the 4 Bronze Star medals. Spent much of his career at Fort Carson, Colorado, and in Germany. The Army confirmed that he was on approved leave from Germany at the time of this incident. But here's where it gets a little interesting. On the same morning, of course, in New Orleans, another shocking event unfolded. The man driving the truck with an ISIS flag plowed into a crowd of Bourbon Street New Year's celebratory people, just there having a good time with their family and their friends. Of course, over a dozen killed, dozens more injured. The driver in that case, Samson Den Jabbar, also rented his vehicle through Turo, the same app. Both Jabbar and Livelsberger, again connected via Fort Bragg, North Carolina. They both served in Afghanistan in 2009. Again, authorities say there's no evidence that they ever crossed paths, that there was any connection there. But again, isn't it just odd that we have 2 Army veterans, one active duty, and they both seem to have excellent military records, and then they turn like this? I mean, what's going on here? 2 violent incidents, both involving veterans, both using rented vehicles on the same day, using the same app. Sheriff McMahill made it clear that investigators are still working to uncover any potential connections or motives. Doesn't appear to be any connections, though. For now, there's no concrete link between the 2 events either. But it is a coincidence, isn't it? The Trump International Hotel issued a statement emphasizing their commitment to safety and cooperation with authorities, saying the safety and security of our guests and associates remains our top priority. Also, Elon Musk, and I think it was not just a coincidence that he was driving a Tesla and parked it in front of a Trump property. I think that was a statement, for some reason, about Donald Trump and Elon Musk, although his family say that he was a Trump supporter. So reconcile that for me. But Elon Musk, of course, the CEO of Tesla, has, according to authorities, personally assisted them in the investigation and say that Musk's involvement was a game changer in the case. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Sheriff Kevin McMahill publicly thanked Musk, saying that the tech mogul provided invaluable video footage from Tesla charging stations and additional information that has been critical to piecing this together. Now, this is a great example of how private industry stepping in when they're needed and can help public officials. Sheriff McMahill shared some of the details about the blast. He explained that the design of the Cybertruck actually limited the damage because the doors and the construction of the body is so strong that the blast went up rather than wide and probably save additional lives. I think we can honestly say that one of the biggest stories of 2024 was the non-story that the mainstream media claim was the case with the obvious cognitive decline of Joe Biden. The media landscape in this country has been a battleground for the last decade or so. But every now and then, something comes along that can really shake things up, that can really make everyone stop and think, are we really being fair about this? Are we being honest with ourselves? Like the comments from veteran CBS reporter Jan Crawford over the weekend. She didn't just dip her toe in the water. She dove in head first, calling out her own industry, her own colleagues in the mainstream media for what she says was a catastrophic failure to report on President Joe Biden's cognitive decline during his presidency.
Undercovered, underreported. That would be, to me, Joe Biden's obvious cognitive decline that became undeniable in the televised debate.
At the presidential debate.
Undercovered and unreported. It's a pretty clear description, or an honest description, isn't it? Where was she last year? I mean, let's be real here. This is not news to you and me. We've known this. We talked about it all during 2024 and prior to then. Conservative outlets, conservative voices, including yours truly, and you, because we've had this ongoing dialogue. We've been sounding the alarm on Joe Biden's struggles for a few years now. But now we're hearing it from CBS, of all places. Crawford, who is the network's chief legal correspondent, made these remarks on Face the Nation, calling Biden's decline the most underreported story of 2024. She finally got it right, didn't she? Because it was the most underreported story. It wasn't even reported on within the mainstream media. They totally ignored it. In fact, they were complicit in covering it up. They went out of their way to make sure that it wasn't reported on. She's referring, obviously, to when it started falling apart at the disastrous showdown with Donald Trump and Joe Biden last summer. We all saw it. It was painful to watch. Even if you don't like Joe Biden, it was still painful to watch to see an old man be in the situation he was in. Biden fumbled through key questions. He struggled to articulate basic policy ideas. He didn't seem to know where he was at times. And it left most Americans wondering if he had the stamina and the mental sharpness to even continue for the next few months, let alone another 4 years. That was the unraveling of Joe Biden, and we watched it on network television. But even after that, some of the mainstream media still tried to make excuses, and still do to today. There's still some of the mainstream media who will cover for, or try to cover for, Joe Biden. Now, it gets a little more interesting here. Crawford pointed to a Wall Street Journal report that details how White House staffers spent the last 4 years working literally overtime to shield Biden from public scrutiny. They went out of their way to make sure we didn't really see the real Joe Biden because they wanted to keep their jobs. They wanted to keep the power. According to the report, they formed what she described as a tight circle to limit his in-person interactions. The goal, of course, was to keep the American people from seeing just how bad things really were. And there's a lot of people who are complicit in that, including Kamala Harris, including Jill Biden. Jill Biden, you would have thought that she would be wanting to protect her husband. Oh, she wanted to protect him, all right. She wanted to protect his power. She wanted to prop him up and to help prop him up so she could remain the first lady. Now get this. Biden reportedly insisted he was fit for another run at the presidency. He was ready to go. We heard him. He was very confident that he could do a repeat of 2020 and defeat Donald Trump. He had convinced himself that he could. Crawford argued that if the media had done its job and had pressed harder on his fitness for office, that it might have forced a primary challenge from within the Democrat Party. And she's probably right. She went so far as to say that it could have changed the scope of the entire election. And you know what? She's probably right there too, from the standpoint that it could have forced the Democrats to have a primary. There could have been a different challenger there. Trump was still going to win. because Joe Biden's cognitive decline, his inability to serve, was not why the Democrats lost office. The American people resoundingly elected Donald Trump and J.D. Vance because of the condition of the country that the Biden-Harris administration and the Democrats, the Democrat leadership, the entire cabinet, had allowed this country to fall into. The high inflation and all of the issues that you and I have talked about these last few years. The open borders. I mean, it wasn't just Joe Biden who allowed that to happen. He had a lot of people helping him do that, including his border czar, Kamala Harris, including his DOJ, including the HHS. I mean, Mayorkas, Secretary Mayorkas. Joe Biden didn't open our borders and let them remain open by himself. He had a whole team helping him. And that whole team were the ones who were trying to protect him. The whole team were the ones who were trying to keep their power. So they're all guilty of this. So let's go back to the summer. Biden's horrible debate performance in late June. Some of the media then could no longer ignore the obvious. Not all of them did, but there were a few. The floodgates began to open. The questions started to being answered because some saw their power slipping away. Some realized, hey, we're going to lose this. Joe Biden can't win this. We can't afford to have Donald Trump back in the White House, so we got to scurry around. But who is going to be the candidate? They forced Joe Biden out of the race, and because of the money, because she was the only candidate who could access the great war chest, the millions and millions of dollars, close to $1 billion at that point in time, that the Democrats had, or that Joe Biden, the re-elect Biden-Harris campaign had. They couldn't give up the money. I think deep down, a lot of them realized she wasn't a good candidate. But they went with what they had. Now they wish they hadn't. Now they wish they probably had let Joe Biden's campaign committee keep the money, found another viable candidate. But again, it wasn't going to change the outcome. Trump was still going to win. Trump was going to win simply because the mess that the Democrats had allowed our country to get into. And even after stepping aside, Biden reportedly told advisors that now that he regrets that decision, saying that he still believes he could have beaten Trump, and he'll probably die believing that. He's just an old man who doesn't live in reality. No one's ever going to convince him that he could not have beaten Donald Trump. No one's ever going to convince Joe Biden that he's been a horrible president, that he took Jimmy Carter's place as being the absolute worst president in modern day times. And CBS's Jan Crawford, she didn't hold back. She said, and I quote, "That is either delusional or they're gaslighting the American people when it comes to Joe Biden thinking that he could have beaten Trump and that he wished he had not dropped out." Wow. Delusional, gaslighting, whatever you want to call it. That wasn't going to happen. And let's not forget the numerous gaffes and stumbles over the last 4 years that had Americans questioning his ability to govern in the first place. While some of the media outlets, like the New York Post, did cover these moments, Fox News covered them, Epoch Times covered them, Newsmax covered them, much of the mainstream media just stayed silent. They didn't want to cover it. They didn't want to talk about it. Kamala Harris, who stepped in as the Democrat nominee, ultimately lost to Donald Trump, which we knew she would. Now Trump is heading back to the White House gloriously on January the 20th, and I can't wait. The story doesn't end there, of course. The media's failure to cover Biden's struggles wasn't just a missed opportunity. It was a disservice to the American people, and they have to be held accountable somehow. Voters deserve to have all the facts about the man leading the free world. Instead, many were left in the dark until the last possible moment. I hate it for the Democrats, but it does raise a question. Where do we go from here? Can we ever trust the media to hold leaders accountable and their party accountable ever again? Will the mainstream networks, the NBCs, the ABCs, the CBSs, will we ever be able to trust them to really cover, and I don't care what party, Democrat or Republican, to ever cover our national leaders again? Text me, email me, joey@joeyhudson.com. By the way, one other quick story here, again involving another U.S. Army soldier who has been charged in the case of selling confidential phone records. The story raises a lot of serious concerns about national security and integrity of our armed forces. This is the case of Cameron John Wagenus, 20 years old. He's been charged with counts of unlawful transfer of confidential phone records and information. Federal authorities unsealed the indictment this week, detailing the allegations against the soldier who was stationed at Fort Cavaras in Texas. This is the guy who had the phone records of not only President-elect Donald Trump, but also Vice President Kamala Harris, and had sold them to some very bad actors online. Again, what's going on with our soldiers? Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Firmin Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Firmin Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Firmin Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Firmin, Matthew Firmin. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Firmin Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Firmin Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Firmin Ford online at firminford.com, firminford.com. So today's the big day. The U.S. House is scheduled to vote on their speaker today. The Daily Caller reported House Republicans will make it more difficult to oust the next speaker for the 119th Congress, according to a rules package that was released this week. Republicans' proposed rules package prevents House Democrats from introducing a motion to vacate the speaker and raises the minimum number of Republicans required to prompt a vote on the speaker's ouster to 9 GOP members. The current rules for the 118th Congress allow any member of the House to trigger a vote to oust the speaker. This would be big if, in fact, they're able to pass it. And I suspect they will be. They've got to get past electing a speaker first. This proposed new threshold of non-GOP members to trigger a vote to remove the speaker is one member higher than the 8 House Republicans that voted to oust former Speaker Kevin McCarthy in October 2023. 4 of these congressmen, Republicans Matt Gaetz, Bob Good of Virginia, Ken Buck of Colorado, Matt Rosendale of Montana, are no longer serving in the 119th Congress. They either chose not to run for re-election. In Matt Gaetz's case, of course, he resigned when initially he was going to be the Trump Attorney General. Keep in mind, the House must vote on a speaker first for the 119th Congress before the legislative body can consider any order of business, including consideration of the proposed rules package. But we expect for them to get there at some point. Again, the House is scheduled to vote today, with Speaker Mike Johnson seeking another term in the speakership role. Given House Republicans' unprecedented small margins, Johnson can afford to only lose one vote. And we know of one. Thomas Massey of Kentucky has already said that he will vote for another GOP member besides Johnson. There's several other House Republicans, Chip Roy of Texas, Andy Harris of Maryland, Victoria Sparks of Indiana, Andy Biggs of Arizona, who say they're undecided. Now, that could change. May have even changed overnight, because there were late-night meetings last night, probably went into early morning hours. We don't know yet. We'll know later today. Back to the rules package. It also sets up 12 bills for consideration. including legislation that would prohibit a ban on fracking, require proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections, and to amend the definition of sex to be based solely on a person's reproductive biology and genetics at birth for Title IX purposes. Several conservative House Republicans have been critical of the rules package for triggering a vote on a bill to sanction the International Criminal Court, the ICC, for efforts to investigate, detain, or prosecute any protected person of the United States and its allies, citing their beliefs that House GOP leadership has misplaced priorities for the start of this new Congress. Thomas Massey wrote on X, "But how did a bill to protect Netanyahu make it into the House rules package to be voted on immediately after the Speaker vote? Where are our priorities?" Now, I'm not sure that some of these House Republicans are opposed to Israel. It appears that they're just saying, we can get to that. There are other things that we should prioritize before that. The U.S. is not a member of the ICC, by the way, and we do not recognize the ICC's jurisdiction. The ICC issued an arrest warrant for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu back in November, you may recall. Republicans have sharply criticized the ICC's move to arrest Netanyahu over Israel's war against Hamas. And they passed a resolution in June to impose sanctions on the court if it sought to prosecute the U.S. or its allies. The Senate, under Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's leadership, did not take up the legislation. They let it die. House Democrats also slammed the proposed House rules for prohibiting Democrat members from introducing a motion to vacate the Speaker, which could force House GOP leadership to solely depend upon Republicans to pass the rules package. They have the votes to do it if all the Republicans show up and vote together. Massachusetts Democrat Representative Jim McGovern, ranking member of the House Rules Committee, wrote in a statement in response saying, most alarmingly, Republicans are totally destroying the role of Speaker of the House by injecting partisan extremism into the rules. We'll see. I just hope that we can somehow avoid chaos today and we can elect the Speaker and move on and pass these rules and move on, because we have a president to inaugurate on January the 20th. On the text line, Faye writes, Joey, I was brought up old school and that nothing good happens after midnight. This is more true today than ever. Biden has let evil in, and Trump has to bring life back to normal for us. We do pray. Happy New Year, Joey, to you and yours, and thank you for being there for us. Well, thank you, Faye. I appreciate you being a loyal listener for a long, long time, and I appreciate you texting as well. Your texts are welcome. You can always text me. You can always email me, joey@joeyhudson.com, and you can leave your messages on the MyPillow message line. Just call 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639, and leave me a message. Back to the text line. Pete makes a very good point. He says, hey, Joey, regarding the New Orleans killer, there was an easy way to identify him and stop him. He was driving around with an ISIS flag on his truck, and no one thought, how odd, on New Year's Eve. What could go wrong? Now, Pete, I hadn't even thought about that. You do make a good point. Now, I don't know at what point he put the ISIS flag on his truck. I don't know if he literally had been driving around New Orleans with it, or if he put it on his truck as he was entering the French Quarter. I don't know. But either way, when you see a truck coming down the road with an ISIS flag, you probably should be a little suspicious, shouldn't you? Ray says, hello, Joey. I love college football, and now Georgia knows how FSU felt last year. Isn't it wonderful that after the election, this is our big issue? Don't you know that after 120, we will not have any more I-85 closures or NOLA attacks? We are the USA, and we will not be stopped this easily. Ray's reference to I-85 closures is Interstate 85 in my home area of upstate South Carolina was closed yesterday because of a bomb threat. And local officials have to be vigilant. We have to know, we have to treat each one of these instances as if it could be that Tesla blowing up at the Trump Plaza, at the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, because you never know. Jennifer says, hey, Joey, it's Jennifer. Excellent lecture that you gave us regarding how we can't stop working because we're all feeling relieved that Trump was elected. Did you feel like it was a lecture, Jennifer? I guess it was, wasn't it? She says, we got to stay aware and involved in electing the best people to public office. And, we got to start right now for the 2026 elections. And we have some elections coming up this year in the fall. For example, a lot of areas elect school boards in the off years. Some municipal elections in off years. But yeah, we gotta elect, keep recruiting good quality candidates, Jennifer. She wraps up by says, thanks for following up your comments with Chief Justice John Roberts' report on judicial independence. This country's got to get back to respecting the law. Yes, you are so right, for sure. Look, folks, this is going to be a great year. And I'm sorry, Jennifer, if you thought I was lecturing yesterday. And so maybe I need to lecture a little bit more today. But there is a lot of work to be done. And yes, we should celebrate the inauguration of Donald Trump. We should just be happy. And look, I intend to celebrate it. But we also have to know that he needs our help more now than ever. We have to stay vigilant. We have to continue working. We have to keep our head down and keep fighting, because I can promise you the Democrats will too. Let's enjoy the victory. Let's enjoy the inauguration, but just be ready. As Trump himself had said, he's going to start to work at 2 o'clock on January the 20th. We need to be ready to help him. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Firmin Ford text line 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.